Welcome to our second season of Fresh Off the Boat. I'm delighted to be interviewing Devashi Seth. She is an artist. Now she is pursuing ceramic arts and a lot of work with substances other than ceramics too. So we'll love to hear more about how the transition in art school happened and now being in sophomore year. Devashi, first introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about the lovely things that you're doing.
Thank you for having me. I'm Devashi. I'm currently a junior at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and I live in downtown. And I'm currently doing ceramics and also metal work. And it's been a really long journey. And yeah, art school is a lot of fun.
Great. So, I think as you move out of, say, high school, though you were in a good IB program with great art sort of resources, you discover yourself along the way. So, how did you stumble upon something as specific as ceramics and then now metalwork, which is also so different from, say, maybe what's taught in school?
So in high school, like the IB school I was in was more academically rigorous, but I did like find myself like concentrating more on art. So I decided to just go to an art school instead of a liberal arts school and like learn art there. And I grew a lot in high school as well. And then in college, sometimes you might feel like you've come at some crossroads and you're stuck somewhere. But like that's when like going to SAIC, it's like a great opportunity for me because it's interdisciplinary and I can like I don't need to have a major and I can take any classes in any departments, which gives a lot of opportunity for growth also. And in my freshman year, I took painting, and then I always knew I wanted to do something with more like material, like 3D. So I took sculpture in my second semester, and then COVID happened. So then I was trying to navigate through that. And then in my sophomore year, I took like just a bunch of classes in different departments like visual communication, fibers, ceramics, and like painting as well. And I always wanted to do ceramics, and then finally doing it was just like it was the next level of like kind of happiness and understanding that medium because I care about the environment a lot, and I was always like trying to find that sustainable practice. And I think I found that in ceramics.
Okay,
Because
great. So,
it's, yeah.
I think it'll be interesting for viewers and listeners to understand how it's taught and what does it really entail. What are the skill sets you need, and what the practice sort of, kind of exhibits as you get better at using all the material.
Yeah, so like the great thing about art is that there's no one set right way, and every person has their own like techniques that they use. And like that's why learning from different professors is like so amazing because you get to know different like techniques and like just ways of creating sculptural objects. And I have just learned so much in the last 2 years about ceramics, different building procedures, different like from building pots to like realistic human 3D figures. And like it's ceramics is very intensive and like time consuming, and it is very like it's a lot of labor work. So I think that does take a toll. If so, you need to kind of build that stamina for kind of working that hard.
Okay, so what are the different steps to sort of become a ceramics artist? What are the things that you need to learn, even though it could be taught differently? But broadly speaking, what are the things that any ceramic artist would be doing in whichever order, but definitely pursuing?
um so I I'm not sure, but in just ceramics first, like you always like I started with wheel throwing. I thought that was kind of a basic I should learn, but a lot of people also start with just hand building. So but like from wheel throwing I understood, okay, I cannot wheel throw. It was not like it was really hard for me. So I went on to hand building, and I really enjoyed that, like just not using the wheel and just building like that. And so these are like two different styles of working, and they can also like you can combine them. But everyone has their own preferences, and I think that would be one of the basic things. And then, learning how to make your own clay, learning how to use the kiln, and like also interacting with your peers. And because in college, ceramics is always going to be a communal space, and then you need to learn how to work with others. And then sometimes your pieces are going to fail, burst in the kiln, and you need to kind of just be used to failures. I think that's just for any artist, being used to failures and rejections is the main thing.
So what about the final product? Like how does like the process? So for a layman who's got no idea of making the clay using say hands, then using sort of placing it in the kiln, what happens, and what are the final product finally go through?
So our clay is actually made by our student workers who work in the ceramic shop, and so they make the clay. And then, but sometimes when you need to like make some specific clays, like recently I had to make clay with extra grog so that I can make big sculptures, like 3 feet tall. And so that's like a very intensive process, because you have your machineries for that, and like cleaning up takes a lot of time. But so once you start building, you need to wait for the clay to dry, and you need to make sure there are no air bubbles. So because air bubbles like burst when you put them in the kiln, and because air wants to escape. And so that's another like different process. Then once the clay dries, and you need to make sure like if something's cracking, how to fix that. And then by the time it's dry, you put it in the kiln, which and but then when it's dry, it's also very delicate, so you need to be extra careful. And then you preheat it, then heat it to that around 3000, can go up to 6000 degrees Fahrenheit. um, Clay, it needs to be like done at very high temperatures. So there's like the bisque firing, which is just the first firing, which is at a lower temperature, and then you can glaze your work. So um so like adding different like colors, or there are different methods of like glazing work and like adding color to your ceramic vessels. And then that needs to be fired at a even higher temperature. And then like the firing and cooling down of the fired things is also a different process.
Wow, so it kind of reminds me of how to work with a newborn baby, and at the same time how to even bake bake cakes. So it's kind of a
Yeah.
combination of these two. Fantastic. So now how about telling us a little bit about the metal part of the work, and how is that different?
So I always wanted to work with metal, and I knew foundry was something I really wanted to do. And initially I took a mold making class, because you need to learn how to make molds for foundry. So, and that really helps, because sometimes so first we make a wax sculpture, and then we make a mold of that. So working with wax is not the best, because you need to heat it, then cool it down, and then mush it like like into the consistency you like, and then start sculpting with that. So sometimes people prefer making a mold and then just pouring the wax, letting it cool, instead of like making everything from wax, like from scratch. So because wax is a very like difficult medium to work with. And then after you've made your wax sculpture, you need to put it up on a sprue system. um I'll get into that later. But and then you have to start dipping it in a ceramic shell, so that you're basically making a mold of the sculpture you've made. And post that, you burn it out in a kiln, so all the wax pours out, and then you have a mold. So that's why this system is so important, so that you can pour in the bronze. And there are like a lot of like scientific techniques that go into like how to decide to make the system itself, so that you have a nice smooth pour, and then there are no like things don't go wrong, and it's like you're doing it in a very safe way, and your sculpture doesn't get like completely messed up. Everything pours properly, because like looking at how the metal melts also. And then sometimes you need to patch it up. It's a very long process, but the most fun part is the pour. So we have a whole foundry. We melt bronze or aluminum, which is very exciting. And then we wear our gear. We have to wear like leather boots, which don't melt, like don't get affected. And then we need to wear leather, everything, jackets, pants. Very exciting. Then a helmet. It's like a lot of heavy duty things, and then there's a lot of different types of machines that help us pick up the crucible, which has all the metal, molten metal, and then you pour it, put it back, clean up.
Great. So, this is so fascinating for someone to sort of listen in. Art, and especially ceramics and the foundry work that you're doing, is not just restricted to the aesthetics or sort of just building it out, but there's so much science also involved in some sense. You're handling quite sophisticated machinery at very high temperatures. So is that something that you also have to study? Or it's just the basic user manuals and that's pretty much it?
Wait, sorry, your voice got cut.
Yeah, no, I think something for a second. So yeah, I'm just trying to say that, do you have to also do some science along with the study of art because you're dealing with metal?
No, we do not actually. I just recently asked like the foundry manager, because he made his own kiln, and it's like, for me, like looking at the kiln, because it's so complex, I was like, don't you need to learn engineering to do this? He's like, no, you just like, he didn't go to like a liberal arts, he went to an art school. They taught, because they didn't have kilns, they learned how to make their own. So you don't need to learn like have that science background. You just like practical.
Right.
Yeah, it's all hands-on.
So yeah, this is extremely fascinating. So what's next for you, Devishi? Is it something, it's got one more year, senior year next year, later this year, and then you'll have some exhibitions? How does it work from here? Like, what do? You just start your own studio and start doing exhibitions, or you work with some organization and help with their productions or something like that?
So currently I am interning with a gallery. It's a small gallery run by a SAIC professor itself. So I mean, obviously working with galleries gives more insight into like the professional art world, especially like I think that's something very important to know and explore as an artist. And I'm actually having an exhibition, like a gallery show with it's a group show with some of my friends in the next 2 weeks. So that's also really exciting, and it's like a lot of work, especially with exams going on. But at the end of like when we're about to graduate, like somewhere next semester or in right before graduation, we have a BFA show, so like a Bachelor's of Fine Arts show, which is kind of like our final exhibition, which we show at the school. And because our college has a proper gallery space where everyone shows their work in at the end of the semester or at the end when they're graduating, which is a huge deal. Like usually like about 1,000 people go to the shows. And I think that's really exciting. Everyone like at the end of in their senior year are like just pushing through, working like for their show, trying to do their best. And then afterwards, personally for me, since I'm not doing design, I do want to open my studio. And I also have a painting practice, which I thought that there's so much more I can learn from ceramics and foundry in college that I stopped taking painting classes. So I'm doing painting by myself. And I know that getting those resources of ceramics and foundry will be really hard living in New Jersey. So I plan on like setting up a studio for my painting practice rather than ceramics and foundry currently.
Thanks for sharing all of this, Samira. Devishi, sorry, I'm distracted today. So tell me a little bit about, the graduation process. Like, it's just like you have to submit your work. Is there a way to, is there a thesis requirement, or is there certain shows where you have to also defend what you've produced, or rather, answer questions to faculty? How does it work?
So the BFA show in a way is like the senior thesis, and How do I explain this? So at the end, when we have that show, you need to, the college in your senior year, like send you an email that now you're eligible for the show, and do you want to do it in this semester or the next semester? So it depends on how many credits, like, and when you're finishing college. So that's based on that, they send you the email. And then you need to like register for that, and then you need to send a basic plan or a layout of what you want, which or what kind of space you want. It's a, like, you need to like fill out like a form which is like 10 pages long. It's a lot of like, and then your artist statement, your bio, the materials you use, and if you want, I mean, for gallery shows, you put if you want the work for sale or no, but I think even in like the BFA show, people can do that. And so that's another like process of applications. And then you get allotted a space by random lottery. And sometimes you get the space you want, sometimes you don't, and then you need to adjust your project based on that.
Yeah, so many things to do in the next year or so for you. All the best, Devishi, and it was lovely catching up as usual. And this time it was even more in depth to sort of go into areas of study that you really like and practice that you're developing. So take care and so long, and we'll meet again.
Yeah.